Hello everyone and welcome back to the Sedona International Film Festival. I'm your host Carol Kahn. We are coming to you live from Yavapai College, which is part of the Sedona campus, and we'd like to thank our sponsors, Northern Arizona Healthcare. And joining me now is Kelcey Edwards from The Art of Making It. And I am such a big art fan, I can't wait to delve into this film. And we were just talking briefly right before this interview, and you were sharing with me that your life really has been surrounded by art. Tell me about that.
That's true. My father was a museum curator, and he's retired now, and an art professor and historian. So he instilled a deep love for art and artists and their contributions to society. So yeah, I feel very privileged to have gotten to make a documentary about something that is a subject that is so near and dear to my heart.
Now, are you an artist? I mean, besides filmmaking, are you an artist yourself?
I came into filmmaking actually more through writing. I consider myself a storyteller, but I think visually, my writing tends to be cinematic, so it's a nice pairing. I think that's kind of how I ended up becoming a filmmaker.
And this particular film, this was your directorial debut?
Yes, it's my feature directorial debut.
Awesome.
I've directed shorts and produced a feature, but I've never directed a feature. So after 20 short years of practicing filmmaking, I finally made my first film.
That's awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about the film.
So The Art of Making It is really, at its core, it's a love letter to art and artists, and the incredible work they do, what I like to describe as the long, hard look they give at our world and what they're able to tell us about ourselves and the ways that we're all connected. But it's also a bit of a cautionary tale about what we really stand to lose as a society if we don't appreciate and nurture our artists and give them the support and attention that they deserve, because these are challenging times, and most artists working today are making work about the challenging times we're in, and they're really, in my opinion, the people who are going to kind of lead us into a future we really need to prepare for, because it's here.
Right. Well, there is a term, starving artists, right? Mm-hmm. And so basically most of them have to have a love for what it is they do to continue what they're doing, and to be encouraged to continue that. I have a similar interest with artists, and just very interested in basically how they put their art together. Some of the things, there's like a common thread throughout artists. Have you found that with some of the work that you are doing?
A common thread? Wow, that's a great question and a difficult one to answer. I think, artists are telling us something. I mean, it's a very at once personal and universal form of communication, and I think there's incredible courage and self-sacrifice in terms of what artists do, because they're doing it with no promise of reward or audience of any kind. So it is a sort of calling to invest so much of yourself and your time into making work for a greater good. And it's just heartbreaking to see how many misconceptions there are. And that's another goal of the film, is to kind of put a human face on this process, so that people who may not even be aware of the fact that they perceive artists as frivolous, or or think of art as decorative, that they're kind of missing out on the real value of art.
Yeah, so we do have a trailer of your film, so we'd like to take a look at that.
Okay.
Being in the art world is like being Amish. It is like being in a small sectarian cult with its own belief systems and its own social practices and formations and its own social mores.
Of course, can I take a picture of you, Antoine?
We talk in code, we dress a certain way, we're very identifiable to one another, but we are not an open field.
They'll fly business class to England for $12,000 and refuse to buy an artwork unless it's going to go up in value. They're not fundamentally interested in supporting a young artist's career. what I think the art world needs to do is really look at the DNA of how these structures work, how we build our heroes.
I'm going to say how envious I am of you.
Thank you.
For being immersed in some of this and dealing in the art world. And I know you have a huge support of museums that have backed this film as well, correct?
Well, I wouldn't say backed it. I would say
supported,
welcomed us in. You know, we're very fortunate. We have extraordinarily passionate and committed producers who, you know, brought access and the ability to connect with our network. Documentary film as an art form is very collaborative and very participatory, and so it's very important that you have the trust of the people that you're kind of sitting down with, and the fact that we got that access to be able to kind of get behind the curtain of the museum world and the you know, art academia, you know, the MFA systems and the system and the art market. We just had you know, in the film we journey everywhere from, you know, the mega galleries to, you know, the intimate, you know, personal art studio moments and kind of everything in between. So that was incredible.
Did you find a lot of diversity from maybe going from a major like art gallery to something that maybe not as major, like a smaller gallery per se? Is there a lot of differences? Because like you look at like a New York gallery and you think to yourself like, oh my God, like that's amazing, right? But there's art there, but there's also some found art in like smaller galleries and smaller places that are tucked away.
Yeah. I mean, I think when you climb up that sort of pyramid in the film, you start to get a sense of how much room for improvement there is, and how much, you know, in a way, you know, like a lot of kind of, you know, enormously complex systems, this amorphous thing we refer to as the art world can kind of get in its own way. You know, systems become entrenched. And that's, you know, part of why we refer to our chorus of voices, the experts and the insiders that we get to speak to in the film. Internally, we would refer to them as the disruptors and visionaries of the art world. And so it's really refreshing to hear from people that are calling for change, but also have the courage to, you know, to speak out on behalf of that kind of change, and it gives you a sense of hope. But I think the greatest hope in the film really is in the artists themselves, because, you know, the mere act of being an artist is inherently kind of revolutionary.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite? Do you have a favorite artist?
Of course not. They're all my babies. I mean, I just have so much admiration and respect for every artist. We were, you know, we had the privilege of working with Gisela McDaniel, Jenna Gribben, Chris Watts, Felipe Baeza, Hildeland Helfenstein, and so many more, Sebastian Ross-Rees, just really wonderful thinkers and creatives, and I'm in awe of their work.
So what's the biggest takeaway that you would say from this, meeting all the artists and really just kind of hobnobbing with them?
The biggest takeaway, I mean, you know, I think, in a funny way, I think that they have, you know, one of my greatest moments in the film actually comes towards the end, and I think it's a moment, you know, one of the great things about this film is that, you know, because we went through this transformation of the art world, as it was kind of embedded in the broader context of the pandemic and everyone becoming kind of collectively connected through a shared experience in a way we hadn't been before. I think we all became more reflective at a certain point, and you feel that in the cast of characters, and that's something that our film got to kind of capture. And so on the one hand, you have people, you know, who, you know, are, you know, the most kind of, you know, successful and powerful people within this industry, wondering if there's new ways that they haven't embraced yet that they can become more inclusive and more open-minded and move into their futures on one end of the spectrum. And then you have young artists who've been selling prints out of the back of their car and serving coffee for 10 years, painting, sexual violence survivors, doing murals for the public good and saying this is me living the dream, being able to share my message and do something important that will connect with a community. Mm-hmm. And the artistry of filmmaking is that you get to create a space where people of these extremes get to live together and be in dialogue with one another. And hopefully the film will get out there and move hearts and minds.
Do you feel like art is evolutionary and like there is peaks and valleys, right? And so, if so, or where are we now in the art world, would you say?
Where are we now in the art world? I think we are in a moment of revolution, and I think it's interesting. The film begins with the opening scene is an art exhibition, works by Sebastian Rosaries called "Beginning of the End," and at a certain point in the film, post-pandemic, we're sitting up on a rooftop with one of the main character artists, Chris Watts. And I remember the moment in the interview when he was reflecting on all the change that had happened in the world, and he said, maybe this isn't the end. Maybe this is the beginning. Maybe this is the beginning of everything. And I remember when I heard it as he said it, even though he talked for another hour, I thought, okay, well, that's the last line of the film. Because you've got your bookend. But that's the end of the film is, you've gone through all of this change, and yet we're just getting started. Yeah. And that's where we are.
Well, I feel like that's even evident for you. You're just getting started.
Thank you. I know. I can't wait. It's a wonderful feeling to realize that I could spend the rest of my career making films about the art world and never run out of things to talk about. And I hope to.
Well, if you do that, I'm tagging along.
Thank you.
I'm definitely tagging along.
Thank you. And I appreciate what you do here, Carol. Thank you for talking to filmmakers and giving those artists a platform to talk about their ideas and projects. So,
well, absolutely. And tell us, where can we find out more about your film?
So you can go to theartofmakingitfilm.com, and that will have all the updates about upcoming screenings, like South by Southwest, where we learned just a couple weeks ago will be included in the Festival Favorites category. And then I'm actually flying tomorrow straight from here to Big Sky for Big Sky Documentary Film Festival. So there's some exciting screenings coming up, Miami International, Cleveland International. And then our Instagram is at theartofmakingitfilm. And if you can go there and find all the people to tag and all that stuff. Social media stuff.
Awesome. And you just have to remember to continue tagging the Sedona Film Festival.
Of course.
2022.
Exactly.
Always remember that one.
Of course.
And has your film been it been shown here, or is it going to be shown again?
It's going to be shown again today, 4 p.m. at the Mary D. Fisher Theater. And I have to say, we screened a couple of days ago. It's a blur now. At 10 a.m. A couple of days ago. And a big shout out to Sedona. The audience was so warm and generous and giggling from the minute. You always wait as a filmmaker, you wait for that first big laugh and just think, oh, I hope they find the funny. And they were just giggling from the beginning, as they should. I think it's a very funny opening scene, and I was so appreciative that there was that warmth and generosity. And people stayed after. They had to kick us out of the theater, and we talked in the lobby for another hour. So it's a really wonderful place to screen. So thank you, Sedona. And thank you, Sedona International Film Festival.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I really look forward to following your success. So, that's where you're going.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And we will be back with more from the Sedona International Film Festival after this.